my friend, I thought, I can't live with one more child.
Yeah.
I just can't, man. Like, it is on me.
Yeah.
I need to speak up.
Yeah.
So I put on this fucking wire. And it was hard, bro, because I had to go with police and do all these interviews and rendezvous.
Glen Fisher, welcome to The Greatest Comeback.
Yeah, hey, mate. Good to see you, Luke.
Mate, thank you for doing this. Our mutual friend Libby Stewart put me in touch with you, so thank you, Libby, for the contact. It's been funny for me because since I've launched the podcast, the number of people that have come out and said you've got to speak to this person has been overwhelming. So I'm so grateful for all of the love and support that I've received, and it's given me a chance to meet amazing guys like you. So I'm very grateful for that, mate. I didn't know anything about you when Libby put us in contact, and she gave me your name, and I did some Googling and watched a few videos, and I thought, oh my God, this guy's got a story. And to some extent, in preparing for this, I didn't really know where to start because there's just so much to talk about. But then I thought, you know what? Let Glen tell his story.
Yeah.
So where's the best place to start for you? Why don't you
Well, I'll start, I guess, at the beginning. It's always a good
push the
place to
boat out
start,
for
as they
us?
say.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was born in a family with a mother who was alcoholic, schizophrenic, who swapped the rich for the bitch, so she ended up becoming a heroin addict. She was a heroin addict and ended up swapping to alcohol.
Okay.
And she had a real bad propensity.
What was that
towards
expression
violence.
you just used?
The rich for the bitch.
The rich for the bitch. I've never heard that before.
Oh, haven't you? Yeah, it's the rich being the heroin and the bitch being the alcohol.
Yeah.
So, so she took up drinking, and my dad, he was a drunk at that time when I was born, and I was also violent. And for the first 7 years of my life, there was a lot of violence. A lot of parents fighting. I was usually the child, the oldest, that was targeted often in that violence. And I got removed like 22 times before the age of 7 by docs. They kept removing us, putting us back, removing us, putting us back. And around about the age of 7, I moved to Mount Druitt. And what happened was the first time I was sitting out on my veranda, and a neighbour shot his brother dead in front of me across the road when I was 7 years
When you were
of age.
7?
7, yeah. And I just remember sitting there somewhat fascinated, really, as a 7-year-old, because I don't think, comprehend the gravity of what I was watching, And he was there most of the day. Like, they covered him and they put things around him, but they didn't actually remove this guy. And I just kept sitting there. And the two coppers come over to my parents and they say, you really should take this boy inside, mate. He shouldn't be sitting out here watching this, The reason this is important is what happens next. About a week later, I'm coming home from school, as a 7-year-old with my brother. And as I'm coming in towards the driveway, I see a police wagon out the front of my house. And instantly alarm bells go on. There's violence in my house every day. As my little brother got hurt, my little sister, his dad hurt mum, his mum hurt dad.
How many siblings?
So it's 4 of us. I'm the eldest.
Yep.
2 brothers and a sister. And so I start running home. And as I get to the bull wagon, I hear a voice come out of the back of the wagon saying, Glen. And it's my dad. My dad's in the back of the bull wagon. What I didn't know then, but I found out years later, was my dad had been arrested for pedophilia. He was a predator, right? I knew that there was that stuff going on in my family because my dad's best friend, Uncle Pat, was abusing me and he was abusing his daughters. So that's kind of what was going on. They were kind of swapping children. And anyway, my mother ends up putting us the next day into an orphanage, me and all my siblings, in a place called Lewisham, to an orphanage. She ends up getting the 2 younger siblings out, but leaves my brother and I in there for about 18 months. And eventually I get out. It's around about the age of 9 where my life really starts to take some violent shapes. The first thing that happened is my mum wakes up one morning and she's like, the Mr. Whippy truck's going. And back then they used to sell Becks and Vincent powders, right? So my mother's like trying to scurry through the house to find change so she could run out and buy her daily version of Becks. And she turns to me and she says, "You stole my money, you little prick. Where's my fucking money?" And I'm like, "I didn't steal nothing from you. I wouldn't have the guts to steal from my mum." She was crazy. And the next thing, she picks a knife up and she just throws it like a big kitchen knife. It just misses me, and she says, "I'll cut your fucking fingers off," she says. And I'm like, well, Anyway, what ends up happening is she starts skitching out really bad. She grabs me by the hair and starts dragging me along the carpet in the lounge room in Mount Druitt. Another lady turns up who's a friend of my mother's, name's Michelle. And she says, "Help me get this little prick to the bathroom." And she ends up dragging me to the bathroom, holds my fingers over the sink and literally severs 2 of my fingers. I was like, wow, that's a violence my mother had not reached before.
And you were 7?
I was 7. I was 9. 9 when that one happened. That was the first of a chain of things that happened. That first one was the first time that I realised I'm actually in danger as a 9-year-old. I remember sitting on that floor bleeding, and somewhere had the foresight to wrap my fingers up to stop the bleeding. And the thing I remember the most about that, Luke, is that when I was at the hospital, the doctor's stitching up these fingers, right? On this side, there's a lady putting iodine all over my body because I've got carpet burns all down one side of my body. And the doctor turns to my mother and says, "What happened to this little boy?" And my mother just lost her shit with this doctor. And the way this guy cowered, he didn't say nothing from there on. If that happened today, it'd probably be on the front page of the paper. Everybody in Australia would know what had happened to this little boy. But it didn't. What happens is this guy cowers, nobody says nothing, I get stitched up, and off I am home again. About 2 weeks after that, my mother was giving me tablets, right, Valiums and Seropax to make me sleep when I was a little boy. It's in my docs files. That's the insane thing about my docs files. It literally says, mother's giving child sedatives to calm him down because he's hyperactive. That was her excuse for it, right? But that also opened the door for allowing what happens next. She puts me to bed one night with the Jack and Jills. I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm facing the wall and I've got the most brutal pain. I'm being raped by my dad's best friend, Uncle Pat. I'm 9 years old, and I remember when I wake up, him grabbing me around my face and covering me from unable to scream. But I was so overwhelmed by what was happening, I literally couldn't move. I think I was in shock or something, because I don't know if you can explain it, but I couldn't turn my head, like I couldn't move, and he ends up letting me go and walking out of the room. I remember sitting on the bed, rocking back and forth for ages. I'm 9 years old. I don't have a concept of what sex even is. I don't know what's happened to me. I just know it hurt. And I know the residuals of what happened after, all the gross bits. And then the third one was about a week after that, where at my mother's at my Uncle Alan's house, her brother, who's a drunk, 6'6", teaches judo, violent alcoholic. And he's got a son named Little Alan. Right, and little Alan's out the back, and he's saying, "My dad does judo, I do judo." And I said, "My dad does karate, I do karate." You know what kids are like. Yeah. "I'll beat you my karate, beat your judo." So the next thing, we're fighting in the backyard. Mum and Uncle Alan come out, and my mum says to him, "I've had enough of this little C. Drag him in here and give him the belting he deserves." He took us both in the bedroom and he pulled his strap off. He's drunk. He's about 18, 19 stone. And he hits little Alan about 40 times, man. I swear to God, he just didn't stop. And I thought, what is going on? Like, I've been belted a lot in my life and bashed and hit, but I've never seen that. Then he turned it on me. Across the face, across my stomach, across my groin. I was hit everywhere. Then he turns back to Alan, does it again. And then turns back to me and does it again. Those three things really changed the dynamic of who I was. I went from being this bubbly little smiley boy, even though all these things have been happening, I still had this smiliness about me. But now all of a sudden I've retreated into my little shell, I end up, for some strange reason, when my dad gets out of jail, my dad gets custody of me. Now, I never understand how a convicted pedophile twice, he's been not only allowed to get custody of me, now at 10 years of age, but he's married up with a new woman who's got 2 little girls and a son younger than me, right? I lived there for a couple of years, go to school for a few years on the Central Coast, and then I'm sick of being hurt, mate. My dad's violence is different to my mum's. My mum's was alcoholic rage. She just threw out. My dad's was more silent. He would be sitting there and then suddenly whack, he'd just hit you, and that's was something he'd done weeks ago. He was more scary, my dad, and he was more capable than my mum. Yeah. So I started running away from home, like I'm sick of being hurt, mate. I just want to be safe.
At any point did the thought occur to you to tell someone about all this stuff?
See, that's the difference. In the 70s and the 60s, we just weren't, who? I didn't have any person. I was bullied at school. I had no real friends. I was isolated pretty much from the world. And as sad as it sounds, the friends I did have had a similar upbringing. I remember the kids were all broke like we were, had no money.
This is Mount Druitt, right?
Mount Druitt. Yeah. And I remember that the kids had a lot of bullying and in my circle, a lot of parent violence. Alcohol was normal, drinking, all our parents were always at the pub fighting. That was normal, to me. And when I moved with my dad, it was actually to the Central Coast, and I found it really hard to fit in. I never was anywhere long, so I never really able to establish a friendship with anyone, growing up. But yeah, no. And
so you would have, your trust would have been, trusting adults and trusting the world, that would have been non-existent. for you as a
I
little kid.
had zero trust. And it's the saddest part to my story when I think back on it is that I so wanted to be loved by my mum and dad. Like, it upsets me even saying it. And the harder I tried with my mum, the more she seemed to reject me, and I was like, she's, oh, you're pathetic, oh, you're weak. And, like, I'll share a story with you. I was 9 years old. There's another thing that happened, right? My mother, we never used to get presents or lavish gifts. But at 9, I got a Hanimex bike and my dad bought me a toolbox, and it was because they were fighting for me over custody, right? I went out riding this bike around Mount Druitt one day, and this group of boys, about 14, 15-year-old, grabbed the bike off me and take it off me, right? So I go home with my tail between my legs to my mum, oh, these kids has taken off my push bike off me. My mum, she's we'll go down there, we'll sort that out. Come with me, boy, and drags me down the street. She reaches this big group of 15 and 14-year-old kids, and she says, which one of you's the one? Grabs who's the biggest? Fight my son. I'm 9 years old trying to punch on with a 14-year-old. I mean, it didn't take a scholar to work out how that played out, you know what I mean? And then the whole way home, my mum's saying I'm a weak cunt and I'm a gutless, you don't know how to fight. I'm just like, fuck me dead, I'm 9, man. Like, what 9-year-old knows, to do that stuff.
What was her upbringing like, do you know?
Very violent.
Yeah.
She grew up with 3 brothers, all like that Uncle Alan I was telling you, very violent, alcoholic. I've had as a kid, I hated my mother with a passion, Luke, if I'm being honest. And I swore as a kid I'd never have anything to do with either of my parents, and I never did. But as an adult now, I look back at my mum and I think she was a young mother with 4 kids, with a pedophile dad, domestic violence, grew up in violence. She had schizophrenia. She was a heroin addict that swapped to alcoholism. She was a very unwell woman.
Yeah. Did you say in the car that she had 4 kids by the time she was 18?
Yeah, 18, that's right. I think it's around that age. Yeah, so...
So docs send you back to your dad?
Yeah, which, again, makes no sense to me and is the subject now of a lawsuit because the systemic failures in my case are endless, and that's just one of many. But as I said, I started running away. Right, I'm sick of this. And the system solution to my running away is to, of course, incarcerate me. So I'm placed into institutions like Warramai, Yasmar, Albion Street, Minda, and eventually by the age I'm 13, I get sent to a place called Darrick Boys Home in Windsor, which was out of the pot and into the fire. It's like a military army. You've got to stand at attention and ease everywhere. Kids are raping each other. The adults are raping the children. And, I spent my whole time walking on eggshells prior to there, and now I'm walking on eggshells again.
Yeah, this is in the 80s, right?
This is in the 80s, yeah 1980, literally 1980. And but what happens next is what's really insane. I get out, my dad picks me up, takes me back to Gosford, I run away, literally within a day. I'm not doing this, but this time I go to docs, and I say, listen, I'm not trying to run away, I'm not trying to be a bad boy. I said, I don't want to go back to the institutions, but I can't live in this violence anymore, I'm fucking scared. And they said, all right, we'll get you a foster parent. So they find me a foster parent in Blackett and Mount Druitt with this family that's got 9 people living in a 3-bedroom house, 3 men living in a back bedroom, and I'm placed into that back bedroom in 2 bunks. 2 of the men of the 3 have got prior convictions for raping children. One, a girl in their care whilst staying there, and then the other one, Les Carter, abused a 2-year-old child of a similar name. And doesn't take a scholar to work out what happens there either. I'm asleep. It's always in my sleep. These frigging creeps come on to me in my sleep, and again, I'm abused in my sleep. And I end up going to my mother, back to my mother. My mother's tricked me in a way. She said, we're moving to Whyalla. I've met a new boyfriend. We're going to go to South Australia. He's going to work at BHP. We've stopped drinking. Come back and live with us. And
sorry, what was going on with your siblings at the time?
They all stayed with my parents or my mum. They were all with my mum. I was the only one sent to my dad.
Okay.
Yeah. And, they were all living there. And one brother was the golden child. He never got any abuse, but the other 3 of us went through quite a bit, in different ways. We moved to South Australia, and when we get there, my mother has a punch-on drunk. They drink at every pub all the way to South Australia. And then when we get there, they realise that there's no house. It's a caravan we've got to stay in a caravan park. And my brother and I are too much expensive to keep. And she has a fight with the boyfriend. His name's Henry Clavell, and they start punching on. So me being the older of the children, now 13, 14 almost, I'm like, don't touch my mum, bro. And I'm trying to fight with him, and so is my brother jumping in on my side. She calls the police. The police come around and they say, the only problem I can see here, love, is you drinking. It's not these boys. So she kicks us out. Then what ends up happening here is they put us on a bus back to Oxford Street to meet my real dad, right? And when I get out of the bus at Oxford Street, I'm starving, mate. Lee Marvin, I haven't eaten for 3 days. And, I'm hungry, mate. And I'm thinking hopefully Dad's going to get us something to eat and take us home, I start walking behind my dad with my brother, and my dad turns around and says to me, "Where do you think you're going, mate?" He says, "Fuck off, come with me." He said, "Go and find somewhere else to go. Go to your foster family." I was like, fuck. And I sat down, Luke, at the bus terminal, Oxford Street, and I just started crying, mate. I was fucking, what do I do?
You're 13.
13, yeah, just nearly 14. And a guy comes and sits down beside me, this big guy. His name's Terry. He's a butcher on Oxford Street, right? He's big and looking and big beard and stuff, but talks real gentle, "You okay, little man? You don't look well. What's happened, I can give you somewhere to stay. I can give you feed." I'm like, "Oh, okay, thank you, mister." Like a naive child, So I follow him up the street. But something in me twigged. As we're starting to walk up the stairs, I think this doesn't feel right. Something's maladjusted here, just not right, So I said, "Look, mister, thank you, but I don't want to go with you, I had a little bag. All I owned, mate, was a pair of shorts and a T-shirt in this bag, He went to grab my arm, but he got the bag and pulls at it. I let it go and I piss bolt down the stairs all the way down to Central Station, and I catch a train to Mount Druitt. I walk from Mount Druitt Station to Blackett, which is a fair hike, and I get there about 5 a.m. in the morning, and I sit on the front veranda. I'm too scared to go in because they've said to me when I left, "If you leave, you can never come back."
These are your foster parents?
Foster parents. They gave me an ultimatum. If you go, you can't come back. I didn't want to be in that house, man, with these predators preying on me, but I didn't know where to go. So it was the only option I had available to me, right? Anyway, they don't want me either. So they put me on a train at Mount Druitt Station, put $5 in my skyrocket and rang a Refuge in King's Cross. And that's where it sort of starts for me, where you'd think that that's where it ends, but it's not. It's actually the beginning of my journey, where things really start to get fucked up in my life. But I feel like my whole childhood groomed me to what happens next in my life. Like I've already been abused in every place I've gone, so I'm somewhat accustomed to that behaviour. I've witnessed drinking and drugging and alcoholism at its finest, so I'm already accustomed to that. I've seen violence at every level in every, you can imagine, so I'm already accustomed to that. And I remember arriving on the streets of the Cross, and I wrote this in my book. I remember saying, "No adult's going to ever tell me what to fucking do again. I am my own man. I'm going to be my little boss," And in my 14-year-old brain, I believe now that you can't tell me, but we know as parents, that a 14-year-old child knows fucking shit. They don't know nothing, and unfortunately, that's how it plays out. I land with a whole lot of street kids, and I fall into a circle of living in squats and stuff like that, and then what happens is I'm playing a pinball machine one day. This guy walks in, puts some money on the counter. He's an adult, He goes, "Oh, you winning, bruh?" I said, "Yeah, killing it." Like what I'm a kid, fucking oath, I've got this machine mastered. He goes, "You're good, you're so good," pissing in my pocket, telling me how good I was, how handsome I am, all these kinds of things. "Oh, thank you, mister. You look hungry, bro. Do you want something to eat?" "Oh, I'm fucking starving, bro. Let's go get a feed." So off I go with him, have a feed. I go to his place, I smoke pot, nothing happens. And I think, "Oh, how cool is this guy, He's actually a pedophile, right? I don't know this at the time. Then a couple of nights later, I'm up on the main street of King's Cross, and a fight ensues. And like all kids, fight. So I go running to the fight, let me see. And this is a vicious fight. This is between doormen and bikers, and it's fucking savage. It starts off with 2 men on 1 man. It ends up about 10 doormen, 10 bikers. A big circle ensues around me, and I'm at the forefront of it. And I'm being pushed forward into this fight, and I can't get out. Suddenly a man reaches his arm through me and grabs me and pulls me through, and he says, "Fuck off out of here, kid." And then another woman said, "Children shouldn't be in King's Cross, fuck off." And I'm just like, okay, I'm gone. And I run, and I don't know where to go. I can either go to the squat, which is Manning Street. It's 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning. I'm being honest, I was too scared to go there, right? You had to go through all this myriad of bush and shit. I was just too scared to do it. So I ran to the pedophile's house. And he said, "Oh, I can look after you. I can give you money. I can take care of you." And like, I'd like to say nothing happened, but it didn't. I land straight in the hands of a pedophile, and that becomes my home for the next 6 months, Yeah. And from there, I've got a whole lot of other street kids hanging around me, so they sort of come to the house. I start dealing for this guy, dealing pot. I'm being abused. I'm accepting this is how I have to live. That's how I get my money. I've got a roof. I'm safe. But it's not what I want. It's obviously not what I want. I end up meeting a beautiful girl. She's the reason why I speak today. even saying her name hurts me. It just does. And you'll know why when we get further along. But I met this beautiful girl, Linda, and fucking she was just everything, man. She's my first kiss, my first sex, my first cuddle.
Where'd you meet her?
At the train station. So me and my mate Samboy, we're standing at the train station, right? And these two girls walk through the station, both stunners, right? And I said, I got the one on the left. He goes, I got the one on the left. I said, well, let her decide.
Yeah.
Does she ever say this? Like, you know what I mean? You know what kids are like. But we walk up to them, hey girls, how you going? Hey guys, how you doing? And they're sniffing lighter fluid, right? And it's like, what the fuck's that? And I said, oh, come with us and we're going to sniff lighter fluid. So we go with them. I'll never do it again. I'm telling you, fuck me. I was off with the fairies. But she ended up becoming, they were street kids. We were street kids. They ended up coming and living with her. She became my girlfriend. I fell in love with that girl, man. Like I said, I'd never felt love.
Yes.
You know, and I had a person who just sat on my lap all the time. She used to put her nose on my nose. I know it sounds childish or weird.
Not at all.
She used to put her nose on my nose and she used to go, I see you. Nobody sees you like I see you, Glenn. She used to say that song, Starry, Starry Night, to me all the time. She goes, paint your colours blue and grey. What was the word she used to say? There's a part in the song that she always says that used to resonate with me all the time. It was basically saying that the world doesn't see you the way I see you, Glenn. If they saw your heart the way I see your heart, they would love you. That's what she used to say. And I had this persona of I'm a tough little street kid, but underneath was like a little boy, you know, a little
wanting to be
boy,
loved.
wanting to be loved. Yeah. And this is where the story really gets dark. So I'm in the park one day and two little girls walk into the park. Now, the park in King's Cross is a predator's playground. It was called, I don't want to use the word predator's park, I'll just call it that, right? It's all the pedophiles hang around and pick up children. But right next to it's a pinball parlour. So all of us street kids sit right here. The first thing that happens is I go into the toilet. There's a kid named Scarface Ray. His name's Paul. And he says, he tells everyone he's my big brother, looks after me, right? I go in the toilet one day, and as I'm sitting there in the toilet, this guy puts his thing through the bloody wall. I'm like, what the fuck? I run out and I tell Ray, I have no idea what's about to happen. Ray walks in and bashes the living Christ out of this guy, right? Then the next day we're sitting there, these two little girls walk into the park, probably 10, 11, 12 maybe, in school uniforms. They're surrounded by fucking predators. They're just, woof, you know, straight onto them. And so something in my mind, I can't protect myself, but I understand how to protect others, if that makes sense. So the instincts of me kick straight in. I run over, get the fuck away from these kids, mate. What are you fucking doing? This big guy walks up with a leather jacket, these kind of leather jeans, looks like one of those big butch guys from Oxford Street, you know. He walks over and he starts talking to these kids. And I said, hey, mister, I said, get the fuck away from these children. He goes, oh, I'm a counsellor. I work at the Homeless Children's Association. It's a refuge just up the street in King's Cross. What I don't know going in is he's actually a pedophile, and all of the men that run this are pedophiles. This refuge was founded by a children's magistrate, a judge named Rod Blackmore. It had Bob Hawke on the board. It had 7 other judges and had 5 men working there, all of which are pedophiles, and a woman who's complicit. I don't know any of this, right? We're back and forth. He goes, oh, I'm a counsellor, I'm a this and that. He said, I'm going to take these kids. I said, you're not fucking taking them anywhere, bruh. I finally end up agreeing I'll go with him. And all of us, as I go, a posse of children follow me down the street, right? He introduces me to this man named Simon Davies, who's the CEO of the HCA, the Homeless Children's Association. He's a leading journalist. I just put him in jail for 10 years. But anyway, what ends up happening is he pisses in my pocket. Oh, look at all the kids that follow you, mate. You're so intelligent. You're, you know, all the things that groomers do, you know, and groomed me perfect. You should come and stay here. You know what he did? He says to me, I know your story, Glenn. He said, let me guess. You grew up in institutions. Your parents are drug addicts or alcoholics. You've probably been sexually abused, physically abused and emotionally abused your whole childhood, right? He said, that's what this refuge is here for in King's Cross. We're here to find kids just like you so that you don't end up having the life, you know, having a bad life and becoming an addict and all that kind of stuff. But it was just a ruse, right? Silly Glenn. So not only do I move in the refuge, my posse of friends that follows me to the refuge.
Where had you been living prior to going to the refuge?
With that pedophile,
okay,
that guy, David Willard, his name is, on Victoria Street in King's Cross.
Okay.
Yeah. And I didn't want to live there no more. And I thought, like, it's a refuge. I can have all my friends. And the only rules were no violence. We could drink, we could use drugs, we could sleep with our girlfriend, we could come and go when we want. It's right near King's Cross. What more do I fucking want? You know, as a child, you know, not knowing what he needs. And so I move in, and all my friends and I move in, and it doesn't take long before it starts. What happens is I'm go to the office one night and Simon's in there playing the guitar, singing that song Teddy Bear's Picnic, and he's drinking a bottle of scotch. And he goes, "Hey, come in. Do you want a drink?" "Oh, yeah, fucking oath. You know, I don't even drink alcohol, never even had it." Pours me half a glass of scotch, adds Coke in it. I'm like, "Oh, that's pretty cool. I'm in the office with the boss drinking alcohol. You know, how cool's that, you know?" Drink one down. Then another guy turns up. He's a pedophile too, named Paul Jones. He goes, "Oh, mate, you should try one of these. They're called Reds." So I take them. I think it's second. I don't know what it is, or Mandys. Mandys it was called, Mandys. So I take one of them. The next thing I know, I wake up in the morning, I'm semi-dressed, and I'm getting flashbacks of the night of being abused. And I'm like, fuck, man, this time I'm angry. I get up and I walk out the door and I go down the bottom of the stairs and I see Grant Morris, another pedophile, but I don't know that yet. And I said, "I've been raped." And he said, "Who by?" I said, "By Simon." He said, "Oh, I'll meet you tonight. I'll meet you tonight at the cafe. Just keep it to yourself and come and talk to me at the cafe tonight." I go to the cafe and I meet him and Annie, the woman that works in the Refuge. And then they start scolding me. And at first she said to me, "Glenn, this is King's Cross. This is how King's Cross works." Then Grant says, "Everybody here has a boy. Every man here has a boy that they look after. You know, this is like, Simon loves you, Glenn. Like, what are you going on about?" And then Simon ends up coming into the picture. And the next thing you know, there's me and 3 adults doing this one to me, you know, like, "Oh, if you say this, you know, then the refuge will shut and then all your kids will be back out on the street and you won't be with your little family." And, you know, they were very manipulative. And I, for some reason, I just stayed silent, you know, and I didn't say nothing. And for the next year and a half, I go through all this abuse by all these different men, you know, like it become normal to me that this is how I survive in King's Cross, that I'm now a commodity. My body is a commodity. That's how I'm going to exist and survive. The Refuge gets shut down in 1983. So what happens in January of 1983, another guy that runs another refuge goes and confronts a general who's also on the board and the judge, Rob Blackmore, and he says, "Simon Davies is abusing these children, sexually abusing that. Everybody in the town knows it's happening. This needs to stop." And so they call Simon into his office and they say, "You can no longer be the CEO of the HCA or live at the Refuge." But no one goes there and checks, speaks to any of us kids, nor reports any of these crimes, right? What happens is Simon does stay at the Refuge, continues to abuse, and then in August of 1983, I come home one day with the other kids and they say, "We're shutting down the Refuge." I said, "Why?" "Misappropriation of funds," they said. That wasn't the real reason. I went to the paper. I ended up saying, "We're not fucking going nowhere." I said, "You can go, we're not." Us kids stayed in. It was actually a big page on the front page of the paper, the Telegraph. Street kids refused to leave, you know. What ends up happening after that is when the Refuge shuts, they put all of us into an institution and I get let out. Yeah. And it's when things really go sour. I get out. 2 days after I get out, I'm arrested for armed robbery, assault and robbery, for a crime I didn't do. Placed into another institution called Minda. And
how old were you at this point?
16.
16, yeah.
So when I get to to court in December of 1983, what ends up happening is they say, "We're dropping the charges," but the judge that runs the Refuge is the judge that runs the court that I'm in, right? Make that make sense?
Yeah.
He puts me into the custody of my primary abuser, Simon Davies. So I'm now forced by the courts to live with my abuser, Simon Davies, his mum, his dad and his 2 sisters in Summer Hill, in Carlton Crescent. I'm like, fuck man, I just can't win a trick, you know? All my friends, my brother, my girlfriend are all locked up in this institution. And it was one of his sisters that comes out one day and says, "Why is this little boy sleeping in your room? This isn't fucking right." So he ends up dumping me right into another place. And I'll leave it for there for a second if you want to go and ask me anything.
Yeah. I mean, it's at any point were you living on the streets?
Yeah, in and out, in between. So when I got out of the institution, for example, I was living there was a place called Manning Street. It was a squat. It was an old convent. It's still there now, but it's all been done up. You know, interestingly, I went down there not long ago to do some footage and they called me inside and they go, "Oh, you're the guy off TikTok." So come in. Yeah. And I walked in, he goes, "Can you tell me about this place?" He said, "We only bought it we're architects. We bought it a couple of years ago and done it all up." And I told them about it. It had no levels. You know, the first time I went there, Luke, I was with a group of kids and we walked in and a girl named Ada had overdosed. There were no floors, right? So you had to walk along the beams to get up the levels. And anyway, Ada had overdosed. And me being the youngest at the time, which was only 14, they said, go get help, go get help. So I ran out the door, not even knowing what help looked like, right? I'm running up the street, telling people, like, this girl's overdosed in the back street. I'll call a fucking ambulance. I ended up going to a shop, finally telling someone I need an ambulance. Then I didn't know where I needed it for. Where was it? Oh, it's up that street and then you turn left. It's like, we can't tell an ambulance to go up that street and turn left. You need to know where you're going. And then someone else came in and they said, I think he's talking about the Manning Street squat. And Ada died. You know, she didn't make it. And that was the first time I saw anyone of many that I would see die over the years. But yeah, that was, I used to stay there and I used to sleep in the park. So in the park itself, there's a brick wall thing with a tree in the middle. I used to sleep often in there. I don't know why I felt safe, even though it was a predator's park, for some reason I felt safe sleeping there in the daytime when I roamed the streets at night.
Wow. And I think I read somewhere that you would sleep in clothing bins.
Yeah, so that was later on. So after we get out, Marlene, my next girlfriend, her and I used to sleep in clothing bins. But what ended up happening was there was a time where people were setting them alight. And there was people in them on one occasion where they got set alight. So I stopped doing that. But yeah, I was so little I could crawl into these bins and they were warm, bro, because they were full of clothes. I used to cuddle up to my next girlfriend, Marlene. And yeah.
Yeah. Incredible. I bet you saw some stuff living on the streets.
The amount of violence I used to see and the amount of addictions and drug. I mean, I see people getting robbed, bashed every day. There's people in the back lanes. And I've always had a soft heart. I remember walking along with a group of kids once and seen a man sprawled out in the back street and an old guy beaten up really badly. And I stopped straight away to help him. My friends just let him go. Another guy walking up going through his pockets while he's laying on the ground. I'm like, wow. I didn't have that heart, Luke. I just don't. I had to stay with that guy, you know, and I just did. The amount of things I've seen so many people die from overdose. I've seen people die from battery acid. I've seen a guy stabbed in the side of the head with a bottle. I've seen some shit, yeah.
What were the worst nights to be living on the streets?
Friday and Saturdays. Because what happens is often people come out of clubs drunk, walking around the street, you know, and they're looking for a fight. And who's an easy mark? A street kid or someone that's homeless? Homeless person. Often they target either. You know, it's like they see you as less than, that you're somebody less in the community. So it's okay to just throw punches or say horrible things to these people, you know. And I've seen that happen a lot. One good thing about King's Cross was the street unites. So if someone does attack a street kid or someone on the street, a local, the streets comes together and you're suddenly fighting the street. That was the one thing I loved about the streets that was good, was like I've said, I don't know if I've told you in this, but the people who looked after me are the people you would least expect it. They were the prostitutes, they were the drunks, they were the addicts, they were the people who parented me as a child.
Wow.
They were the ones who would give me food, ask, are you hungry? Give me a lounge for a night, you know?
And where's Linda at this point in time in the story?
So Linda's still in the institution and I check up with another girl named Marlene. We take off to South Australia. So I'm a breakdancer. That's a part of my story I've left out. So I busk. That's how I make my money now on the streets, busking and breakdancing. I go to Adelaide and what happens is I'm busking on the street to Adelaide, right, doing breakdancing and stuff. I go in this competition, right? I believe I'm the best breakdancer in Adelaide, right? So I want to prove it. And so they've got this competition, but in Adelaide, it's only in the clubs and the pubs. And I'm not old enough to get in. I end up convincing this guy to let me and my new group now. So I had a group called the Megazoids, which meant many street people in Sydney. But now in Adelaide, I called one called the Electrical Connection, right? And I got all these group of dancers in Adelaide and taught them all my routines and stuff. And we entered in this competition and we win. We actually won the competition, right? That night, I got approached by a guy to do ads and stuff. Then I'm walking down the staircase, and as I'm walking down the staircase, I see one of my mates from the Refuge. His name's John Chapman at the bottom, and he looked really somber, you know. And I'm like, hey, bro, we just wanted to, did you see me? You know, did you see me?
Yeah.
You know what kids are like.
Yeah.
And he's still got this somber face on, and then he says, oh, man, I don't want to say it. Linda's dead. Your girlfriend's been murdered. I was like, are you fucking kidding me, bro? I fucking grabbed him, bro, and I threw him against the wall. Now, John could have thrown me back. But he didn't. He just sort of retreated into the wall. And I was like, he said, Glenn, I'm so sorry. Linda's dead. Mate, I think my heart stopped, bro. Like, it's the first time in my life I ever felt fucking defeated.
Yeah.
You know, I just felt fucking defeated. I remember collapsing almost to this point of, what the fuck, bro? Some guys had reached out looking for a young girl to have sex with. They paid some girl to find her. They gave her heroin. She overdosed. They were too scared to do anything about it. And you know, the saddest part to this is they were caught. They got 20 years in jail, convicted for this, for abusing a little girl and her life. Then they appeal, and they gave her for a judge named Judge Elden, who's a convicted pedophile judge who ended up suiciding over this. Not over this particular story, but over his abuse. He set her killers free on appeal. And mate, that injustice in my heart, you know, that was the catalyst for what happens next in my life, which I come back to Sydney. I actually got caught in Goulburn on the way back with a pair of nunchuckers, and I got put into jail for 2 weeks. I couldn't get out in the cells, and I missed my girlfriend's funeral. When I got back to the Cross, I've seen my abusers, 2 of them on the street, Grant Morris, who I've since had convicted for 2 years, 8 months, and Simon Davies, who I've since had convicted for 10 years. I said, one day I'm going to tell the world what you fucking did. I said, one day I'm going to write a book and everybody's going to know. And I said, I'm going to hold you accountable, motherfucker. And he looked at me and he started laughing, Luke. And he goes, you can't even read and write, bro. How are you going to write a fucking book? And he said, you're a junkie. He said, you'll be dead by the age of 21. And both things were true, right? They were true. But it's stored in my brain. I thought, yeah, I'll show you, motherfucker, you know, and it took me 30 years. But I did hold them accountable. I did put them in jail. I did write my book. And I am telling the world what they did.
Incredible.
But Linda's death, bro, it just ripped my soul. And so when I get back to the Cross, I become a junkie. I become a heroin addict. You know, I start using. I went on self-destruct mode, bro. I was fucking needles in my arms. I'm robbing people on the street. I'm doing...
Do you remember that first hit?
I do. And you know, it's funny. For the first 2 years, I used speed, right? I was working in a nightclub in Oxford Street called Patches. And I was a bar useful with another guy, right? With only 2 straight guys in Oxford Street. It was fucking funny. Yeah. But a lot of good girls there, mate. You know, but anyway, we're working there away, but I'm using speed every day, mate. Worse and worse. I'm carrying around a toothbrush box with 3 or 4 made up. I've got about 60, 70 caps on me that I'm selling. Like I'm, you know, full on. I only last year, I bit a guy. So what happened was a guy upset me in the club. I grabbed him by his hair and I bit him on the nose as hard as I could, and I threw him to the ground. I knew that was the day something's not right. Something's not right with me. Like, that's a level of violence I've never reached before, you know. And I got sacked, obviously, from my job. And then I start dealing speed for bikers. So I'm living in the Cross and a flat, and they're above me. The bikers are living above me, and I'm dealing big time. I'm dealing to all the Oxford Street. I'm dealing to all the King's Cross. I've got thousands of people coming through my house. And what ends up happening is I get raided. So the coppers in the Cross call me Mr. Budsman. Well, they bashed me and my brother when we were 13 and 12, right? And someone wrote a letter to the Ombudsman about it. It wasn't even me. I was illiterate, bro. I couldn't write. But they somehow thought that I had. So always called me Mr. Ombudsman. They raided our house one day and realised that it was me. And they said to the bike, you know, everywhere I went, they were telling them, don't deal to them, because the police control the drug trade in the Cross. And I was bad news to them, you know. I can't get speed. And I end up going up the street of the Cross one day and getting heroin. And I'll never forget when I took it, bro. It was like, I hate saying this, but it's honest. It felt like the answer to Glen. For years since Linda's death, I'm getting flashbacks of all my abuse that happened as a kid, the violence, her death. It's just like this constant noise and chatter going on in my head. When I have this shot, it's just like I realigned. It's like my body put itself back into itself, and I was just like, I was confident. I didn't feel, you know, my feelings had gone away. And, but that was a bad thing, because that set something in my mind that believed this is the cure for me, you know. And I never consciously thought those words, but somehow in my genetics, I've worked out that feels good. And mate, within the next 7 years are bad. I'm on and off methadone programs. I'm doing robberies. I'm robbing dealers. I'm getting attacked all the time because I'm violent, and people are violent and bigger.
When you say robberies, you mean with guns?
Yeah. Knives. Often it was knives. I didn't usually couldn't get my hand on guns, but I did have a fake, looked like a gun. It was a replica.
What would it be? A store or a? What was your
petrol stations was my main thing. Yeah, we used to do petrol stations, and we used to rob dealers. So I got sick of going to dealers and being fucked around. I used to think like they treated it like God, you know. They'd be nice to you a few times, and then you'd say, "Oh, I'll be over in an hour." 3 hours later, they'd come, or, "Oh, bro, look, I haven't got money today. Can you hook me up?" You know, like, fuck off, bro. They aren't interested in your money. And I thought, fucking, why am I going to all this to get money, then go to the dealer? It's quicker to just go straight to the fucking dealer. So I used to get someone else to knock on the door, and then all of a sudden I'd put my foot in, and they'd, "Oh, no," they call me Stretch. "No, Stretch, please." No. I was like, fucking, you know, like.
So you'd rob the dealers?
I'd rob the dealers. But that brings with it its own problems because they can pay other people to come looking for you on the streets, and often that
Well, they
happens.
know who you are too.
They know who you are. But I had a Scarface Ray up my pocket. I got chased. I'll tell you a funny story. I was walking down from Central Station to the cross one day, and this car pulls up with these 4 big men, and they all jump out of the car and they start chasing me. Now, luckily, I'm quick on foot, so
Yeah.
I'm able to run them. But this happens for a few days in a row. Anyway, I'm on the main street of the cross, and I walk past Ray, and then all of a sudden this car comes, and I just take off, right, run. The next time Ray sees me, he says, "What the fuck happened, bro?" I said, "There's a car following me. Everywhere I go, there's 4 men are trying to get me." He said, "All right, bro, next time they come," he said, "get them to run by this way." I said, "Why?" I said, "You should just do it." So this guy gets out of the car, a fucking monster of a guy, comes running around the corner, past near the police station, just past the Bourbon and Beefsteak. Then Ray just goes whack and hits him, and he just goes bang to the ground. These 2 men have this fucking ferocious fight that goes on for about 15 minutes. I'm like, fuck me. And Ray ends up getting the top of him and holds him down. Obviously, someone that I'd upset, you know. You can't do what I'm doing without repercussions to what you're doing, you know. So the next step for me is to start dealing. I start dealing big time heroin, and of course makes a habit worse. And yeah. And
Where were you getting the heroin from?
So I had a guy, I nearly said his name then.
Don't say his name.
Yeah, but he's a pretty well-known gangster in the cross. I mean, he's dead now, so it doesn't really matter. But it was coming through Nettie, and Nettie was giving it to another guy, and he was passing it down to, you know, I was getting it through his connection. And yeah, it's, I was paying $900 for a 5-weight bag, and I was selling them for $1,500. So every time someone bought 2, I was getting 1 for free plus coin. It was I was making big money, plus selling 50s and 100s. I used to pull up to Bondi in my car, and I'd have all these canisters, 50s, 100s and halves. And mate, there'd be 20, 30 people waiting for me. You know, like I did it for ages, and I'm on methadone programs as well. But what ends up happening is I meet another girl, a beautiful girl, and this is my 3rd girlfriend now. And I fell in love, and she fell pregnant with a little baby. I actually get off drugs. I'm on methadone. I've got a job as a manager.
Sorry, how old are you now?
I'm now 18, nearly 19.
Okay.
I'm now working in an aquarium as a manager, and what ends up happening is there's a train strike, and I can't get in for 3 days in a row to get my methadone. On day 3, I end up catching a taxi in to get my methadone, and when I get there, they won't serve me. And I get there exactly as the door's shut, and the woman that works there is Annie Crow, who's the woman that works at the Refuge. So she's got a beef with me already, right? And they kick me off the methadone. For the next 2 weeks, I stay on the streets. Now, I've just got engaged to be married. I've got a little girl, and I'm a manager of an aquarium. And I don't go home for 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, on my birthday, 1st of October, I go home, and my brother's there. You know, my brother Jason. And anyway, long story short, he ends up, he's been sleeping with my partner for the 2 weeks that I'm away.
The mother of your baby?
The mother of my baby. And so that's it. I walk out. I don't want nothing. The only 3 people in the world at the moment I love, her, that little girl, and my brother, my fucking closest mate in the world, you know. And I nearly took my life, Luke. I walked out and I sat outside a church, and I was just sitting there rocking back and forth, and there's no fucking point to this life. It's just fucked. This whole world is fucked. And anyway, I was outside a church that was playing music, and the music for some reason was comforting me. And I'm just listening there, rocking back and forth. And I just kept saying over and over, there's no point. What's the point? There's no point. And I just kept saying this statement over and over and over. And then I just stood up, walked into this church, and there's like a cross with a sheet hanging over it with all like paint and stuff. I wrap it around, put it around my head, and go to step off. And from somewhere, some guy grabs me around the side and lifts me and pulls me back. And he's a priest. And he...
That was in the church?
In the church. Saves my life. And the funniest thing about that is, well, there's any funny thing around it, but 15 minutes after that, I remember thinking, what the fuck did I just do? What was that? Like, I was so much in pain.
Yeah.
You know, I just wanted it to stop. You know, the death of Linda, the betrayal of my brother, the withdrawals of heroin, the kick off the methadone, it just felt, and then I go back to all the abuse, you know, it just felt like it was never ending for me, you know? And I end up going to jail a few weeks after that for armed robbery.
Wow.
And it saved my life. It sounds stupid, but going to prison literally saved my life.
How old were you when you went to prison?
21.
And how long were you in?
3 years, 8 months.
Okay.
So I did 11 months on remand, and then I got Supreme Court bail to Odyssey House. they let me out on the bus right after the Supreme Court bail. My girlfriend with the baby turns up at court. I said, I'll meet you at Wynyard Station. She says, what are you talking about, mate? They're about to put you on a bus and escort you down to Campbelltown to Odyssey House. I said, just meet me at the Western Wynyard Station, I'll be there. Anyway, we're going along in the bus and we go past Hyde Park, tiniest little window like this, big burly guy sitting next to me here like that. And I just look and they stop at a red light. And boom, seconds, mate, I'm out the window, flush down there. When I got to Julie, and this is sad really, she said to me, you got a choice. I said, I need some money, I want to go to the crossing school. She goes, I'll give you the money. Or she said, you can come with me, we can put bygones be bygones, and you can come with my little girl and I and be a dad. And I said, no, fuck that, I'll take the heroin, thanks. Give me the money. And I'd like to say I regret that, because I do, but she wasn't my person. But that little girl was, if that makes sense. And I did want to be the dad. I just didn't want to be with that betrayal. But eventually, you know, I get away for a few times. The coppers are chasing me everywhere, mate. I'm walking up the street one day and I see 3 coppers across the road. They're licking on an ice cream. And they look across the road and they look like, they realise who it is. Yeah. I ran towards them, right? And then turned left down to the back of the cross, down Chapman Steps. And I get about halfway down and I'm cheeky as fuck. Come on, catch me. They can't catch me, right? About 4 months later, I'm in another back lane of the cross and I've just finished having my whack. And so the day before, right, what happened, right, I'm sitting on a staircase and I had a whack and then I woke up on the ground with blood coming out of my head. Somebody had hit me over the head with a bottle that lived in the flats. And like, because they didn't want people shooting up on their stairs, I literally cracked this thing over my head. Coppers came, didn't recognise it.
While you were out of it?
While I was out of it, yeah, while I was out of it. I was on the nod. And the ambulances came and then the police just put me in the ambulance and away I went. But they weren't detectives, they were just uniforms, you know, Johnny Oppers, they didn't know. But a few days after that, I'm down in the same place but in a different spot, and so I can see what's going on, mixed up, had my whack, and then I'm sitting there and all of a sudden 3 detectives walk in. They're like, hello, Glenn. You're not so cheeky now, are you? It's like, there's nowhere to run. And you know what, I didn't care anymore. Yeah. I just didn't care. And I went to jail. I got sentenced to 2 years, 8 months. And it saved my life. Yeah. I wasn't kicked off the methadone now, so I was on nothing. So I spent my whole time in jail clean. I learnt to read and write. I spent every minute.
Where did you go to jail?
So I started off at MRC, Long Bay. Then I moved to Parramatta, then back to CIP. Then I went from CIP to Bathurst to Bathurst X-Wing, and then X-Wing to Oberon. Okay. I undertook a course. I did my GCE, General Certificate of Education, and I read book after book after book. And in the back of my mind, I'm going to hold you fuckers accountable. I said it, you know, and I meant it. I'm going to write that book and I'm going to tell the world what you did.
What was it like getting clean in jail?
It was hard, man. For the first 9 months, I couldn't sleep. I was always pissing. I was distorted all the time. I was getting into lots of fights. Were
there any facilities in jail to help you do that?
No, not then. There is now, but not then. You couldn't even get methadone in prison back in the 80s. You know, it was such a different thing. And I think they were giving methadone out. They must have been, because I remember in 88 or 89 when I was in X-Wing, people were getting dosed. So they must have had some kind of thing, but no, not really. You know, like no.
And what does methadone feel like compared to heroin?
It's very similar, but longer lasting, but it's hard. Withdrawing off, it's much, much tougher. You know, it's sort of like a form of using the heroin. That's what it felt like to me. You know, it's great, methadone, for people who are like myself. The problem, I think, with methadone is that we give it out too accessibly. It's too accessible to those who are not like what I was like. You know, someone's new to using, I've got a few sniffles, I need to see if I can, put them on the dome. And it's, when I first started methadone, it was a treatment program. They'd put you up and then bring you down. Now it's a maintenance program. They put you on, it's lifelong. People spend 30, 40 years on a methadone program, you know, forever liquid handcuffs, you know. Yeah. It's, I spent 30 years on and off methadone, mate. And programs and Suboxytones and all these different treatments that I've gone through. I've been in and out of every detox in Sydney. You know, I told you earlier on, I had another friend named Bam Bam. Another one hurts my heart. She's, we were sitting down having a shot in the back of the Pink Pussycat. She's a stripper in the Pussycat. And she says to me, Glenn, she says, I've got to do 3 jobs in the morning just to pay for yesterday's heroin. She says, I'm so fucking sick of this. I want out of here. I want to go. I said, let's go right now. So we grabbed all of her stuff and we start walking out. Next minute, bang, this big guy grabbed me by the throat and literally lifted me up and pushed me against the wall. And he says, you fuck off out of here, you back in there. And she ends up saying to me, she says, Glenn, you're going to die on the street. You've overdosed 3 times in the last 7 days. Please go and get help. She gives me $50 and she says, go get help. I go to this place called Langton Clinic. I ended up getting a sponsor there named Brett Whitley, who was Australia's famous artist. He became one of my very good friends, but I didn't know he was an artist. I had no idea. He was just a little curly.
He didn't tell you?
No, well, I'm Brett. You know, that's all I knew him as, a little blonde-haired, curly-headed guy with a black jacket named Brett.
Incredible.
And he used to call me the runner. Every time he seen me, I was running.
Yeah.
He said, here he is, the runner. And one day I was sitting down reading the paper, and it had a picture on the front of the Hyatt Hotel with 2 arrows. A car had fallen off the Hyatt and landed on top of another car and killed 2 people. It was Brett Whitley. And it had a picture and it said, famous Australian artist Brett Whitley. And I'm like, well, fuck, I didn't know that.
That's my sponsor.
That's my sponsor, yeah. And it was a shame when we lost his life because he was a genuinely beautiful man.
Yeah.
He was so, I don't know how to put it into words. He just knew what to say, you know, and he was so gentle in how he said it. He was a philosopher, if that's what we kind of call it. You know, he's very articulate and good with his words. But yeah.
How many times did you OD in total?
I had 13 overdoses in a 2-year period in King's Cross alone. I had 3 of them in the same day once. And I got hit by a car as well. Fucking smashed all my ribs. The car comes out. I ran out of the hospital, right, on the second overdose and third overdose. I've come out of the hospital because they're trying to keep me there, right? I'm not staying. And I run out in front of the Royal North Shore Hospital and this car screeches and goes bang and hits me in the side of the rib. I get thrown, I don't know how far, land on the road. I get up, I'm good.
And you've run out of hospital?
Run out of hospital, yeah. Ran down to the train station, back to the cross. And the next morning I woke up in the opposition refuge. I was black all up one side. I had a couple of cracked ribs. I wasn't in a good way. But that's,
and if people brought you back, those overdoses, had someone intervened?
Yeah, every time.
Every single time.
Ambulances. And mate, one of my biggest regrets is how I used to treat them. They'd put the narcode in you and I'd sit straight up and I'd be like, you fucking idiots, I just spent $200 to get like that. What the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, bro, you're clinically dead. You're not breathing, bro. I'm like, leave me the fuck alone, you know.
Yeah.
And every time I see an ambulance driver now, Luke, I walk up and say sorry.
Thank them.
Yeah, and thank them. I say, you know, I tell them that story.
Yeah.
How I was so mean and I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible to hear you say that jail saved your life too.
It did. It's the first time like I could get up. I didn't have to. I wasn't sleeping in a park. I was sleeping in a bed. I had a roof over my head. I was fed 3 times a day. I had 100 friends. I could play chess. I could do weights. I could play touch football. Yeah. And I was getting an education. It's actually, I actually enjoyed jail. If I could have had pot, piss and pussy, I would have stayed.
Yeah.
All I needed was a girlfriend and I would have stayed.
Yeah. Did it take you long to find your way in jail?
It did.
Yeah.
So for the first 9 months was quite hard. And as I told you, I got in a lot of beefs and scraps. And I had a guy reach out to me and he was a boxer. And he said, well, the first one was actually a lifer. He came up to me and said, you're hanging around a bad crew. And he said, what's going to happen is you're going to go to another jail and that crew's not going to be with you. And then they're going to have a crew and they're going to come at you. And he started, you're smarter than that, you know. And then I had another guy who was a boxer and he said to me, you should come and vent your anger, you know, learn to box. So it's what I started doing. And he was a tough master. He could fight, you know, and he you know, he didn't take shit.
Yeah.
But he was good for me because he kept me looking straight ahead. Get your education, use your jail well, learn to box, learn to train, get healthy, and go out and do your mission. Because I told him, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to write a book, I'm going to tell the world what happened. And I felt like I owed a voice to every single kid in that refuge. Yeah. All of them are dead. There's about 3 or 4 still alive. All the rest have died through either suicide, murdered, hepatitis C, HIV. It's
I just want to pick up on something you said a little earlier. You said there were sort of different crews in different jails. Was there communication? Was there between prisoners in different jails? I mean, how would that work?
Yeah, it's according to jail mail. So what would happen is, say someone wanted to pass you get escorted around the jails all the time. They always, when you get comfortable, they move you to another one. They don't like you to be in one place too long. So what would happen is someone would give me a kite, a little letter to pass on to someone in the jail. My first fight in jail was over just that. I was sitting in my cell at Parramatta. I'm on the top bunk. The guy's on the bottom bunk. This guy comes running in and he starts bashing into this guy on the bottom. He says, message from the bay, and starts hitting him about 3 or 4 times. I don't know why. I didn't know the guy down the bottom, but I took offence to it. This is the only place I got in the world. This is my little fucking domain. This is where I live, right? So I get the fuck out of here and I start fighting him. I just happen to have a punch on with him as the pipper goes by. So I get put into Segro, you know, and That's my first time I really punched on, in jail. But I used my jail well. I spent it all learning. I actually became the education officer at Oberon. I was there. I worked in education, teaching other people how to read and write and use computers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because what formal education had you had prior to jail?
Very little, mate. I went through a lot of different primary schools, being bounced around.
Yeah.
Most of the time I was being taken out, put into care, back into homes, into orphanages, back into homes. So I never really had any schooling. I did do years 4, 5 and 6 in a school called Brisbania Public. And then I did year 7, but I had abstinence. There were times out I was in Warramai, I was in Darrick. And then I started year 9, but I never actually went. Like I was enrolled apparently for year 9. I think that's the year, or I was enrolled in year 8 and didn't make it. Sorry, I meant to say year 8, not 9. Yeah, year 8.
Wow. So you did your school certificate in jail, is that right?
I did a general certificate of education. I didn't quite pass it. I learnt to read and write really well.
Yeah.
I couldn't quite get math. And but the problem was that I got out and I didn't bother going. I spent my whole time learning in jail, but I never got to sit the test.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I got what I needed.
Yeah.
And that was to read and write well.
Yeah.
And I can do that.
Yeah. How important was that boxer to you as a mentor in jail?
He saved my life.
Yeah.
Had he not done that, I probably would have got stabbed or bashed or something, because I was mouthy.
Yeah.
I was ready. I was wanting to fight, and I wasn't capable.
Yeah.
I had it all in here, or the anger.
Yeah.
I didn't have the ability.
Yes. Yeah.
And I had the mouth to match it.
Yeah.
And it was only a matter of time if someone said, "Shut the fuck up," and something happened, or
Yeah.
worse. Interestingly enough, when I walked into Long Bay, it was like King's Cross. I knew everybody there, but the rules are different.
Yeah.
You're on your own in here. You're one person, and you don't rely on your mates in here. You got to stand up. Someone puts it on you. The best advice I ever got was someone said, "Don't stand tall, just stand up." And that was good advice. Don't walk around like you're somebody. If someone says something to you, fire up and fucking go for it. But don't you be the mouth that starts it. And don't jump in on your mates. If your mate's in a blue, it's his blue. And, you don't do that.
Really?
Yeah. And that's hard, because I used to see young people come into prison and you'd see them bounce. And you're like, fuck, bro, stop doing that, man. And then they think that's what they got to do, right? They've never been around the scene or the jail or streets. So they bounce around like, hey, you going, brah, and trying to talk out the side of their mouth. And you know what's going to happen. That people will put up with it for a couple of days, and then someone will just target them. And it... and there's nothing you can do. I can step in, and then I'm the target, because you just can't take up someone else's battle in there.
Yeah.
There's more cliques in prison now. The jail system's changed. It's
I was going to ask
racial.
you this. Yeah, how does it work in jail? Is it racially based?
Very now.
Yeah.
So when I was at Bathurst Jail, I started to see the start of that happening. Bathurst Jail was open. They had A wing, which is the boneyard, protection and strict protection. Then B, which is where you go when you first get there, reception. Then B4, which is where I moved to. And then C, which was the Koori wing. And it was all open. There was an oval, there was education, then they put a fence inside the fence, then a fence inside that fence, and then another fence. And the only reason I knew that was when I was at Oberon, I had to come back because I had a dental thing. So they brought me back to Bathurst Main. I'm like, what the fuck? All these fences. Oh, it's segregated now, bro. Protections are here, this group's here, that group's here, that group's here. And I'm like, fuck me, man. And it's even worse now, apparently, which is quite sad. We've gone along the lines of American jails, and it's different. Back then, you just didn't need to be a smart ass and you were okay.
Yeah. What would your average day look like in jail?
Well, most jails are working. You got a choice. You can either work or not. So you get let out of the cells at 7 a.m, I think it is, and you got to go out, get your milk, your cornflakes, you go back to your slot. You're kept in there for an hour, then they let you out in the yard to 11. Then you go get your lunch, you get locked back up again. You get back let out at 1 o'clock. They let you out till 3 o'clock. Then 3 o'clock you get your dinner and you're slotted for the night. So you spend 18, 19 hours a day in your cell.
So you're back in your cell at 3 o'clock and you're out again at 7.
That's right. That's main. Then as you go through the system, you get more time out. So when I got to X-Wing, when I got to Bathurst Main, B-Wing was allowed out till 7 o'clock, but they locked you in the wing. So You're still in the wing, but you're out of your cells, and then they come and lock you in your cell at 7, and then locked out. The time is all the same. But then when you get to Oberon, it's a farm. So we were up at 7 a.m. for muster, and then 8 o'clock or 8:30 we go and work. They used to take you out pruning trees. I used to write poems. I put a poem underneath the office one day and it says, "Prune your fucking trees yourself, you fucking dogs." And I wrote this long poem, right? Fisher to the office. Did you write this poem, sir? No, Chief, I didn't do that.
Yeah.
But I ended up becoming, like I said, I ran a marathon in jail and I came first. I think I told you that. We raised money for HIV for children with AIDS. And I ran it in 3 hours, 1 minute, 42.1 kilometres. That's how fit I'd gotten myself, playing touch football, running every day. So I knew I had some kind of skills. And when I got out, I ran in a marathon in Bathurst. I come 28th, and it was a proper marathon. And but that was a half marathon. And I got all the 28 that above me signed it for me. They said I was the first non-professional runner in the list, if that makes sense.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, and then I picked up heroin again, of course.
In terms of your cell, were you in there on your own? Did you have a cellmate? How does that work?
So in the main, max, I was at Parramatta Jail, I was 3 in one cell because it was overcrowded. At Bathurst, we're in B4, I was in my own cell. We're all in our own cells. In Oberon, they have 10 to a unit. So everyone's 2 out bar 4. And as you move through Superior, how you've been there the longest, you move to 1 out. So the last 12 months of my lagging at Oberon, I had my own cell. I had number 1 cell because I'd been there the longest, you know. And I worked in education. I was, you know, I loved Oberon. I really did. I had 100 mates. I was well liked. You know, I get on with everybody. I wasn't a tough guy. I was trained every day. I boxed. I did touch football every day and my schooling. And I taught others. You know, I was sitting in my cell one day and one of these guys in prison, he's an Aboriginal guy who's known for shivering people, right? He's a tough guy. And I walk into my cell and he's sitting on my bed and my heart fucking stops, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck, what's he wanting with me, you know? And I won't say his name, but anyway, he goes, shut the door. All right, bro. I shut the door. And fuck, what, you know, I'm standing there pepped, ready to, you know, throw him. And I'm nervous, bro. I'm nervous. And he goes, I can't read and write, bro.
Wow.
I said, right. I said, okay. He said, someone told me you learnt to read and write. He said, would you help me learn to read and write? I said, I can do my best. You know, I said, I'm still learning, but I'll do my best. I ended up getting tapes for him. I went to the teacher that was there and I said, look, I've had this guy. He doesn't want anyone to know. What can we do for him? So they got him tapes with headphones, literally like A-E-I-O-U. And, you know, and he started to learn his way through. About a month or two after, he comes up to my cell and he drops a couple of packets of ox on my, in my kick, you know, and he says, thank you, bro. I said, I really appreciate you. You tell anyone, I'll fuck you up.
Yeah.
Don't say nothing, bro.
Yeah, incredible.
You were never here.
What were you allowed to have in your cell?
Well, you're allowed to have a TV, so it changes. So in the Bay, when I first got there, you're allowed to have a TV, letters, photos. Then in 1988, Yabsy made this new rule where you could only have 2 photos. So there was riots. People were throwing their TVs, their toasters. They lit up all the fucking units on fire. But at Oberon, you could have a TV, you could have a toaster, a Breville, and I think that was pretty much it. But we were pretty, in Maine, we used to make our own jugs out of 2 bits of wire and razor blades and matches. It was a whole little thing. And it's quite interesting what I've seen people make, when they've had strikes, they've had TVs running off the lights. I've seen people make tattoo guns out of fucking nothing, you know, ink out of shirts. It's like, people are really clever.
Yeah.
Some of the most intelligent people I met in prison.
I bet.
The best tattooers, the best guitarists, some incredible athletes and weightlifters and boxers and stuff. And then they're surrounded by some really dangerous people.
Yeah.
I'll share one story with you though that's interesting. A time where my mouth nearly got me in trouble. A guy was sitting here, another guy was sitting here, and he goes, he just got his mate out of protection, right? And they both were co-offenders. And he sits down, and I won't say what he said, but in graphic detail, he starts describing the crime that he done, right? And there's another guy here named Eric, right, Jugwig. And then there's these other 2 guys. And he turns around and he says the most horrific thing that he did to this woman. And just me not thinking, I just said, you're fucking putrid, bro. And I stood up and pushed my chair away and walked away. What I don't know is this guy's shivved about 4 or 5 people in prison, has a propensity toward violence instantly, right? He said, what the fuck did you say? And I realised then that I'd got myself in more than I'd realised, you know, especially when later I was told by a few people his history. Luckily for me, 2 things happened. Firstly, this guy, he said, what you said was fucking putrid, bro. Sit the fuck down, shut the fuck up. So we sat down and kept playing cards, but he kept eyeballing me. The next day I was playing football with some Koreans, and he came up and he said, hey, he said, what are you fucking playing with the Koreans for, bro? You're white. I said, oh, am I? And I just kept on playing, you know, tried to ignore him and stuff. Then all of a sudden I hear Fisher to the office. And I heard about 20 other names called out to the office, and I thought, oh, what's going on here? I got tipped to another jail. Because they always move you, and it was escort day, and I just happened to be, they called out a heap of names, and Fisher was one of them I heard.
Yep.
And I didn't want to go from Bathurst to X-Wing. I didn't want to go from X-Wing to Oberon, but I'm glad I did, because Oberon was, it was like some freedom. It was out in the middle of the paddocks and bush. It was
What
nice.
was the worst jail you're in?
Long Bay, MRC for sure.
Yeah.
MRC because everyone's on remand. They're still volatile. They've only just been arrested. They're still going through withdrawals if they're a drug addict or alcoholic, and they don't know what their sentence is. Once someone's been sentenced, they've got an end date. When you've got an end date, it's easier to work towards. But when you're in that state of not knowing, you're still volatile. Yeah, MRC by far. And then CIP would be the next.
Yeah. And what would they make shivs out of?
Oh, all sorts of stuff, man. The ones I saw was glass and table tennis bat. I saw a guy make one using a window thing and smash. They did it on purpose, and then they quickly grab a piece of glass out of it. Then it gets all cleaned up, and then they get it and they put it into a table tennis, wrap it up with stuff, and then they put it in and break it, so you can't get it out. You see it made. Toothbrushes was another one. People sharpen down a toothbrush and use that. It's
Ingenious.
Yeah, some of the things are
Incredible.
ingenious that they do.
Did you ever see were you ever there when there was a riot?
Yeah, twice. So Long Bay in 1988 when the riots were on for, I was in Parramatta. Parramatta it was. I'll never forget it,
What was that
actually.
like?
My mate, it's horrible, it's scary, because everyone's putting towels over their face because they come in and throw these things that spin. They go, and they throw out all this gas, and you can't fucking breathe, man. They were setting the units on fire. The wings were set on fire, and they had these men. They look like Ninja Turtles. They're called the MEU, and Bathurst are called BEU, and that's
Like riot police.
Riot police.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're screws that are specifically there for riots, and they walk hand in hand like this. Get back, and then they got all these dogs, and they make you all go to the Oval, and it's quite terrifying actually. The first time I got in BEU Bathurst, MEU, sorry, it was. I'm in my cell at Long Bay, and they wake me up. They cell search. I said, go the fuck yourself. And I rolled over to sleep. I don't know how he did it, but in one move, he had me lifted and out of the door. Like that's how big this guy was. He picked me up and literally threw my skinny little ass out the door. Because at that point, I'm 66 kilos, right? I'm wringing wet. I've just come off the street to full-on heroin addict. And that was my introduction to the MEU. Yeah.
Wow. Whatever happened to your boxer mentor?
I don't know. I actually don't know. When I got out at Oberon, the lifer, so that lifer guy I was telling you about, he was at Parramatta, Bathurst, X-Wing, and Oberon with me. He actually organised the marathon. He's funny story with him, right? He was running the marathon as well. He came fifth. But I ran up beside him, right? Because I waited back. Everyone took off too early, in my opinion. I just stayed at the one stride all along. Yeah. And then I got up next to him, right? And I said, you okay, bros? I hand him a drink of water. He drinks a bit. I give him a rag. I said, wipe your face with it, bro. You're not looking well. And we call him Cliffy, right? Cliffy Young, because of the way he was running. And then I just went. Anyway, the next day when he spoke to me, he said, you fucking crushed me, bro. He said, I was feeling good until you ran past me. He said, you just looked to do it so easy. Just this big, long-legged thing gliding by.
Yeah. So you're an Oberon, and you kind of enjoy Oberon relative to the other jails that you've been in, right?
The best time in my life was then, for that period of my life. Up until that day. I mean, I played touch football every day. I was popular. I played chess. I played cards. I did weights. I worked in education. I had an $1 in my room. I drew to make money. I used to make cards for people.
$1?
TV,
okay.
Colour TV. Yeah, and I used to make Christmas cards. I used to write on them, money's tight, times are hard, here's your fucking Christmas card. That was the poem I put in. Or the other one was just to be, hi mum, got none, need some, love son. And people used to get me to write I write poetry.
Yeah.
So I used to write poems to people's girls for them, or write people's letters for them.
Yeah, right.
I went from being illiterate to being the guy writing people's letters or reading letters.
Yeah. You know? Is that where you first got a sense of being of service?
I think so. No. I think in the Refuge, I got that.
Okay.
When I was in the Refuge, everyone looked up to me. I went from being a bullied kid as a school kid to being popular on the streets of the Cross. Me and my girlfriend Linda were looked up to. She was kind of like the leader of the girls, and me and Samboy were like the leaders of the boys. And not because of my fighting ability. Samboy was by far the tougher kid. But I was the one that spoke, I guess, the most. And so I guess that everyone followed my lead. And but I hate using the word, but I was basically a prostitute when you think about it. They were giving me money for sex. And that money I'm feeding everybody with. I'm buying the clothes. I'm looking after my tribe, my family. It's the first time in my bloodline is the streets, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's my family. And to watch them one by one fucking die, and they did. You know, I watched each one die differently. And each time it took a little piece of my soul.
Yeah. Would it be fair to say that you feel a responsibility to advocate for the voices that can't speak?
Absolutely. So the reason I wrote in my book is this isn't a me story, this is a we story. This is a story. My story is not an isolated case. I'm just one of many. I'm just one who's made it out the other side. The others don't have a voice, and I am their voice. And I want to make sure Australia knows. You know, they weren't just a number or a statistic or a heroin addict or whatever. They were people I fucking loved. And, you know, the maladjusted and the insecure, the people that everyone looked down on, were the most beautiful people.
Yeah.
They would have had saved my life in a heartbeat.
Your loyalty.
The loyalty, that's right. You don't get that these days, mate.
So you get out of Oberon. How are you feeling about getting out of jail?
I was scared.
Yeah.
I remember being afraid. I thought, where do I go? Because I had parole, they wouldn't let me out, right? They said, you need to find a job and somewhere to live to get out. And I'm like, how the fuck's that going to happen? I'm a street kid. I don't have family. I don't have anybody to go to. So I ended up getting Christians. These Christians ended up saying, you can come and live with us. They gave me a job as a carpenter, doing carpentry. And but the woman was seedy as, man. She was more interested in me for different reasons. And I ended up meeting another girl, a girl. And but the problem was that my heroin addiction had been doing push-ups waiting for me outside the door. You know, the minute I walked out the door, I walked straight back in. See, prison's like a time warp. One of the things that they need to change in the system is that 75% to 80% of people in prison are there through addictions or alcoholism, that kind of stuff.
Is that right? Wow.
That's right. It's huge. If we would work towards bettering people, like having a system where you could work through stages, and the stages included anger management, education, you know, all these different life skills that we don't have. But instead what they do is they just teach you to be fucking angry. So when you come out of jail, you're just big, strong and angry, you know, and that epitomizes me. I walk out the door big, strong, angry and capable, you know. You're now capable of doing damage to people. And but you still got the same problems you had when you walked in the door.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what happens with me. And I drag other people down with me because I end up finding a partner and we have children, but I'm living in a victim mode. And I don't know it. I'm a victim, and I'm carrying it like a victim, you know. And I talk about this all the time in my pods and stuff that I do. That, you know, like, we have to let go of our traumas from our past and not allow them consume us for our futures. Because if we don't do that, we're a victim. We're a victim, you know. We're a victim to that person who they're living rent free in our fucking head while they're off living a normal life, you know. Yeah. And we got to let that shit go, man.
So you get out of Oberon, you meet this lady, you have some more children.
Yeah.
Is that the end of your addiction?
No, mate. So I get on methadone programs. I keep getting kicked off for fighting. I'm getting in a lot of fights. In 1996, I was sitting in my home one day with my partner, and I hear this familiar knock. Bang, 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 bang. King's Cross Police. This in Lithgow, right?
How old were you when you got out of Oberon?
26.
26.
I'm standing and I look, and there's these three men. They look like the black men in black, mate. They're all dressed in black. They're from the Wood Royal Commission. 2 women and a man dressed in black, you know. They, in front of my partner, they say, you've been identified by multiple victims as a victim of sex crimes in King's Cross, and we want to talk to you about it. I'm like, this is stuff that I've kept to myself, man. Because back in those days, I grew up with that belief that if anybody knew what I'd been through, like, fuck, you know, that scared me. It fucking terrified me. And I wasn't really willing to speak at that point in time. But I ended up speaking at the Wood Royal Commission around corruption and my abuse. I named a whole lot of names about what had happened. I had 2 men convicted then. But it just kept getting worse. I kept getting worse and worse. In 2009, I ended up going into a long-term rehab in a place called Carolika in Canberra, which literally turns my life around and saves my life. But it also ends my marriage. And, you know, my kids went through a bit of a hard time in those 2 years because I was refining myself. But fuck, I've changed my life since, bro.
Yeah, you really have.
And now, yeah, I stayed straight. I wrote my book. I went through 2 more trials against 2 more abusers, another Royal Commission. I put 4 men in jail. Just had a 5th one extradited from the Netherlands and put him in jail for 10 years.
Wow.
How
do you feel about that? You feel good?
I feel proud, man. I feel vindicated. I feel it's because this isn't just about me. This is about Linda. This is about every little kid in that refuge that were also being abused, you know, the boys specifically. This is about being a voice for the street. This is about saying, I fucking told you. The downside to this was the first 2 I had convicted got 18 months. One of them was charged with 20 separate crimes against different children, got 18 months for every one to run concurrent. So ended only doing 18 months. And back then you got remission, so only done about 14 months, you know, which is just abhorrent. Then the next one I got sentenced to Grant Lee Morris. These are all counsellors at the Refuge. He gets 2 years, 8 months. But Simon Davies, the main player, the one that said to me, you'll die, he took off to the Netherlands, right? He ended up running away. The police ended up in 2016 put out a red notice for him and another guy named Richard West. It was all over the news, everywhere, you know. So he hands himself into the Netherlands. But what happens is the Netherlands has a statute of limitation law. So he's able to activate the statute of limitation laws in their country to negate the crimes in this country. 4 victims, 18 charges. He manages to take 2 of the victims out altogether and 12 of those charges. But they bring him back on mine, right? Because mine fit in the statute because it happened way, way back. And another kid as well. I bring him back here and then COVID. He gets arrested over there, and then COVID hits. So I have to wait 4 or 5 more years. And I go through really bad depression, Luke. I'm sitting on my lounge. I'm putting on weight. I'm not leaving my house. I'm chain smoking. I'm smoking pot. I'm just angry. And then one day the police ring me up and they say, Glenn, guess where I am? I said, where, mate? He said, I'm at the airport at the Netherlands with Simon Davies.
Wow. Oh, my gosh.
We're about to bring him back to Australia. It's like, I fucking folded, bro. I fucking, until I ever wanted was that man to be arrested.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the promises I made to him, so one day I'm going to look you in the eye, I'm going to fucking hold you accountable. I'm going to write my fucking book. Dimity Clancy held my book up in court from Current Affair. And he got up and he read a statement. I didn't want him to see me cry, right? But I did, because he got up and he wrote a statement and he said, I am sorry that I failed you. You know, I should have been a better mentor to you, and said all this shit. And I tried my hardest, bro, but it just folded me. Dimity Clancy walks up, put her arm around me, and she goes, Glenn, you are the strongest person I've ever met in my entire life. And I mean that. And then other people kind of rallied around me. But anyway.
Dude, that's incredible.
He got 10 years. And we put him in jail. I wrote my book, and I'm now telling the world.
That's incredible. Yeah. I want to go back to the Wood Royal Commission for a second. You're a young man that really has never really felt safe enough to tell people what had happened to him.
That's right.
And all of a sudden you're in court.
Yeah.
Giving evidence in a Royal Commission.
I was frightened.
You must have been terrified.
I was. And people were dying, bro. People were literally being murdered for speaking up. So I'll be honest, I was somewhat reluctant. I did give them a list of 22 names of abusers. I told them about the corruption of the police in King's Cross, but it was being investigated by King's Cross Police, which to me frightened me in its essence alone. I had to go to court from Lithgow every day for 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks again. I ended up going to King's Cross, scoring heroin, then going to court because I just couldn't cope with it, bro.
Yeah.
But it ended up happening in 2012 after I get out of rehab. I go back to the police in Parramatta to sex crimes with a solicitor. And I said, there's so much more you need to know. This is my story. And I sat down and I gave them a 75-page statement with the whole shebang, you know, and then when they listened to my story, they had their arms folded, Luke. They're looking at me like, and your mum cut your fingers off, right? Yeah, okay, mate. And that's the way they were looking at my story, you know. About 6 weeks later, they come back and they're like excited. They go, bro, we've been all over the country. We've spoken to your parents, everybody's own, like, this is Richard Idge. We realise that you're for real. We're going to create a whole strike force around you, mate, called Strike Force Boyd. And they wanted me to wear a wire, Luke. They said, we need you to put on a wire. We need to know, you know, I think they needed to test me. And I was scared to do that too. I was like, mate, I've grown up in a world where you don't do that. You don't, you know, speaking up. I had this belief in my head that I was snitching, that I'm dogging on pedophiles, bro. But in my mind, I'm snitching, right? And the police were the ones that turned me around. And I'll tell you what he said to me. He said, Glenn, every kid that he abuses after you is somewhat on you if you don't speak up. And I thought about that, and as the protector, as the person who wanted to protect my friend, I thought, I can't live with one more child.
Yeah.
I just can't, man. Like, it is on me.
Yeah.
I need to speak up.
Yeah.
So I put on this fucking wire, and it was hard, bro, because I had to go with police and do all these interviews and rendezvous and meeting him in cafes. And he handed me a fucking picture with 2 naked children on it, like that I had to sort of fold over and pretend like, thank you, Grant, when really I wanted to, you know. And you know what he said to one of the detectives? So I had to introduce him to a detective who I said was actually a pedophile, right? So I'm hooking him up with what he thinks is another pedophile. And he says to this pedophile, to this copper, sorry, we looked for children that come from broken homes that no one gave a fuck about. That was the easiest way to target them. And I'm sitting right there. This isn't just me you're talking about, bro. This is my brother. This is my friends. These are people I fucking love. I wanted to jump the counter, mate. If ever in my life I wanted to hurt someone, it was right then. I really did. I wanted to just chump him and fucking hurt him, but I didn't. I kept myself contained. 2 nights later, he rings me up about 9 o'clock at night, drunk, and he just starts to reminisce. He wants to talk about the sex that him and I had, the sex with me and another little boy that he had, and I've got to listen to this fucking conversation, Luke. But I do, because I know there's a bigger picture here. As soon as he hangs up, my phone rings again. It's the Johnny Hoppers. They've given me a special phone just for him, right? And they said, Glenn, we got him, brother. Number 3 now. That's number 3 down. And and then he said to me, that copper, he used to ring me up once a week and talk about the footy. I love this guy, man. This is a police officer who went way above. He understands the trauma. He understands where I was at that point in my life, and I was struggling, bro.
Yeah.
And like I said, another part of my story I didn't tell you about, which is important, I think you should know. So after the Woodrow Commission, I went up to one of my friends who sold heroin. And
sorry to interrupt you, I mean, a lot of people listening to this won't have a lot of context around the Woodrow Commission.
Yep.
How many police officers were stood down as a result?
212.
Wow.
Yeah. So 3 people were caught. Chuck Fowler, Trevor Hacken, and another guy were caught red-handed doing stuff, right? What ends up happening is they... Commissioner Woods says, I'm going to give immunity over the next 48 hours for people to come forward and tell the truth, which is bullshit in my opinion, because now 200 and something coppers come forward and they start talking, right? Because now there's no penalty. There's no penalty for all the years of fucking lives lost. Heroin dealt on the streets, you know, like
corruption.
The corruption, you know, like fuck me. And they're just being given a pass, a fucking pass. Like, you know, that gutted me. Absolutely gutted me. And you know what else they did? They sealed my fucking file. And they did it to me again in the Royal Commission into Institutional Abuse. They said, Glenn, we need you to come forward and share your story. This is your opportunity, brother, to have your voice. Now I've got a bit more courage. I'm a bit more vocal. So I come out and I tell my whole story to the Royal Commission into Institutional Abuse. And you know what they do? The next day they say, Glenn, your file's been sealed for 99 years. No one will ever hear it, in other words. And I'm like, what the fucking point? You know what he said? If we was to give Australia the information that you gave us, they will lose faith in the judicial system. And you know what I said back? I said, bro, we lost faith in the judicial system in 1980 when I saw fucking pedophiles when I go to court that I saw in the park or at the wall adjudicating cases. You know how you restore faith in the judicial system? Be transparent. Be open and fucking transparent so the whole country can see what's going on. That's how you restore faith. The Woodrow Commission started off against police corruption, and then Commissioner Woods realised through the commission that they were covering up pedophilia. What was happening was that the police learnt very quickly that they were filming, not the police, but the people who own the clubs were filming little boys having sex with men in booths and stuff, you know, and then they were going and extorting these politicians, judges, police, lawyers, whatever, and getting huge amounts of money for doing it. And but then when people started telling the story, you know, started owning stuff, they started saying that pedophilia became a big turning point in the Woodrow Commission, from corruption to, you know, organised, sanctioned fucking predators.
Must have been difficult for you, because on the one hand, your experience as a younger person was that police are corrupt and not to be trusted, but I'm sure that there were police that genuinely helped you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a guy named Duncan McNabb. He's now a famous journalist. He's a leading journalist. He was a police officer in King's Cross who ended up quitting. He was told to take children to the refuge that I lived in. He refused to do it. He took them to another refuge in Paddington because he knew that the kids in our refuge were being sexually abused. I love that man. He's one of my dearest friends now. Like I know they're dearest friends, but he's a friend, someone who I speak to often. I just gave him a letter to give to the judge from my childhood, who was the guy who opened the refuge I lived in. And I said in that letter, I said, given what you know now, would you do anything different? I said, I'm not coming at you angry. I'm not here to for you to atone for your sins. I just want to know that if looking back in history and all the things that happened, would you have done anything differently? He hasn't replied. All I want him to do is put his hand up. I don't want retribution. I don't want any of that stuff. I just need him to say, you know what, Glenn, I fucked up. I probably should have held them accountable. I probably should have looked after you better. And what they did was they shut down the HCA and opened up another group called the Mangrove Mountain Trust, so I can't sue the HCA, which owns $1 million properties all over Australia. Maybe he should look at compensating some of the children, although they're all fucking dead now, bro. But, I'm not a person who's about money, but the compensation's not about the money for me. It's about saying, I'm sorry, genuinely remorseful.
Justice.
Justice, that's right. And you know what I do today, what I would do with that money.
Yeah, let's talk about what you do today.
Okay. Yeah.
First of all, let's talk about your book.
Yes.
I think it's worthwhile. Grab that and stick it up so that people can see that.
So that's my book.
You did stick to your word.
I stuck to my word, and I wrote this book. It took me 10 fucking years to write it.
Yeah.
But I kept my word. And
what's it called?
It's called Predator's Paradise. I wish I had called it King's Cross, a Predator's Paradise, but I called it Predator's Paradise because that's how I saw King's Cross. It was a Predator's Paradise.
Yeah.
And I don't talk about just the sexual predators. I'm talking about the police. I'm talking about the drug dealers that are preyed on little kids. I'm talking about the nightclub owners that had 14-year-old girls stripping in their clubs and pedophiles.
Yeah.
They preyed on children. Children were the commodity of King's Cross.
Incredible. Let's talk about what you do today, which is advocacy. Leg Up Project.
I'm an advocate.
Let's
I'm an influencer, apparently.
You are. How does that feel?
It feels good because that wasn't ever my intent. I just came out and I just started finding my voice. I just thought, you know what? I am so sick of living in my shame that's not mine to fucking own.
Yeah.
And for so long, I kept thinking if people knew my secret, they wouldn't like me. And I've got to the point in my life now where I don't need them to like me. I don't need them to validate me. What I need is for people to realise that we are the orchestrator of our own lives. We are the person in control. We have the power to make a difference to our own lives. So I started sharing that on TikTok originally. And I was so surprised at the response. I got thousands of people following me in days. People were messaging me saying, keep going, bro. You are so authentic. You are so honest. I just love you. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. And people started saying, can I buy your book? And then they'd read my book and bro, I can't put it down. And then people asked me to do podcasts and all these kind of things that were happening. It was incredible. And then what ends up happening is I get invited to go to a thing in Melbourne with a guy named TikTok Gary. And I love this guy. He was a gangster, drug dealer, thug. He's a little shit. That's what he was, a little shit, who turned his life around and became someone different. And he said to me, bro, you got a hell of a story. He said, I'm saying a fucking hell of a story. He said, bro, you have the power to change so many lives. He said, if you just go forward and tell it. Yeah, just have the conviction and courage to speak. I was coming back from Melbourne. I went to Central Station. And as I got out the station, it's at 12 o'clock at night, midnight. And as I looked around the station, I thought, fuck, everywhere I looked were homeless. And that's where I used to be at 13. So you asked me one of the places I used to sleep. Central Station was one of them. I used to sleep on this little orange seat. At 6 a.m. in the morning, 5:45 in the morning, the coppers used to kick my seat and say, hey, fuck off out of here. And they walked me down to Eddie Avenue, And I thought, this is wrong, man. But I'm on rock and roll, I don't have any money. I was $70 in my skyrocket to my name. I don't get paid for 3 more days. And I thought, fuck it, man, I don't need nothing. I'm going to go and buy these guys something to eat. So I did. I just went and bought them something to eat. And I started talking to them and getting to know their story. And I thought, these people are listening to me, man. I think I can make a difference here, So I thought, next week I'm going to come down again with just $70 in my pocket. But this time I went live on TikTok, right? And I started walking around because what I wanted to do was I wanted to make Australia aware of what I'm seeing. I want Australia to understand that these are people. There's somebody's son, somebody's mother, somebody's father. These are somebody's someone, man. They're not just fucking ghosts. They're not invisible. Like I felt like I was on the street. And people, 200, 300, 400 people on my fucking live. I'm like, what the fuck? They're going, bro, what's your bank account? I'll give you some money to put to them. Give them mate, do they need a toothbrush? I'll give them a comb. What do you need? And so people started sending me toothbrushes, toothpaste, body wash, shampoo, conditioners. And I said, don't give me money, just give me things to take out. So I'd take my little backpack on my back and I'd make up these little packets with, I used to put a $10 gift card in that I was paying for. I was selling my book and doing that. And then I was putting body wash, shampoo, conditioner, razors, shaving cream, toothbrush and toothpaste. That's all I started with for the first 6 months. And my back would be packed for these things. I'd hand them out on the street. But the bigger thing was about connection, Luke. It was about saying to you, I see you, bro. And this doesn't need to be your life. I am a living example. I lived on these streets, a heroin addict. I've been in and out of jail. I've lived through trauma. I know your story. Your story can be my story. Today's addict, today's homeless could be tomorrow's advocate.
Yeah.
And, and little bit by little bit, people started listening. I've got people going to detoxes. I've got people, changing their lives. And I mean, look, there's a lot of people that are not, but I don't care. I meet people where they're at and I just show them that I love them. And maybe it might take them a week, a month, a year, a decade. But hopefully what I'm saying to them resonates. Hopefully what they see from me is that it can be done.
Yeah.
I'm living proof. Who's been on methadone 30 years, who's been in and out of jails, who's been a heroin addict, who's been in victim mode his whole life. And that's the biggest catalyst and change for me, was learning that I'm not a victim. I'm a fucking warrior. And I want them to understand that, you're a warrior too. You have got more strength in you than you realise.
Yeah.
But when you're in that, you don't know that. Because I didn't know that at the time.
All you can feel is the pain.
All you can do is feel the pain.
Yeah.
And for me, I just want it out.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to share with you earlier. Through the commissions, I tried to unlife twice. I went to a heroin dealer and I said, I want to buy everything you got. And I literally told him, he said, what do you want that much for? I said, I'm going to fucking go up the park up there. I'm going to take the fucking lot and I'm going to end it. And he said, oh, okay, bro. And he sold it to me. I walked up to this park. I took the lot, put it all in a spoon, had it, and I didn't drop. I walked about 100 metres, walked into a pub and then dropped. I asked for a glass of water and literally fell off onto the deck. They ended up putting me into an institution for 2 weeks called Piala, a mental institution. And I got out, and 2 days after that, I walked down to the cliff in Katoomba, and I stood there at this cliff at 2 a.m. in the morning trying to find the courage to run and jump. And I just kept saying in my head, I can't take this anymore. And I'm a dad now of 4 children, right? And that's not, of 5 children, that's not in my head, realising what I'm about to do, the pain that I'm going to cause them. All I know is I'm in pain and I want it to stop, And this old man comes out, Luke, dressed in a robe, right? And he goes, hey, bro. I says, hey, mate. He said, they don't always die when they jump over there, right? He said, sometimes they just break all their bones and it takes them hours to get there in a helicopter. And I looked at him and I looked again and I thought, fuck me, that's probably my story, bro. I'll probably fucking
knowing your luck,
bottom, unable to fucking move,
Yeah.
I thought, okay. So I took off, but I was on speed, right? So I thought he rang the police on me. So every time I saw a car light, I'm ducking down behind cars all the way back to my place to Katoomba. When I got back to the place in Katoomba, the next morning, my partner overdoses, right? Nearly died. And then that same day, we got a phone call. It was just like a miracle, bro, from Carolina Rehab. Hi, Glenn, and to my partner, you've been accepted to long-term rehab in the Canberra. And thank fuck for that, bro. Because I was able to, the first time in my life when I got into rehab, to say, this isn't just addiction going on here, man. I think there's something far deeper going on.
Addiction's hiding something else.
I had PTSD. I didn't know what PTSD was. I was suffering with bad depression. I had self-esteem issues. I needed to be liked. I had all these people-pleasing problems. And some of them I still struggle with, Luke. Like, I'm not cured, but I'm better managed. I now am the controller of me and my emotions. I didn't know what emotions were, Luke. The only emotion I knew was anger. And learning to understand that was a secondary emotion, that I actually was feeling rejection, I was feeling fear, I was feeling hurt. There was a lot of other feelings that went on underneath. When I started to learn what they were and be able to identify them and to be able to take myself back to why. why do I feel such a rejection when someone doesn't want to talk to me? You know, why do I feel the need to be heard? Why do I feel, you know, all these different things? And I started writing it. I started journaling it.
Yeah.
And I started drawing and writing poetry. Yeah, poetry helped me.
What would you, if you could go back in time and grab little Glen by the scruff of his neck, and sit down with him at a bus stop, what would you say to him?
Don't trust adults. That would be the first thing. Every adult that you put your hand out to is going to bite you, bro. You be careful. The other one would be is you're more stronger than you fucking know. You know, you have got more power in you, little man, than you'll ever know. One day you're going to stand up and everyone's going to hear you. And but it'd be hard for little Glen to believe that at that time. Yeah. Because little Glen was frightened, trying to show the world that he was not scared, but he was fucking scared. You know what it's like to walk around frightened, but walking around like this. You know, I walk around with bricks under my arms. Don't come near me. But the truth of the matter is, inside, my little heart's doing these ones. You know.
Yeah.
And
are you aware of your power now?
I am, to some degree. I'm aware that I do influence a lot of people, and I'm proud of that. I have men and women come up to me all the time on the streets. I mean, it's hard sometimes. Can I have a photo? And I'm like, what? What are you going to photo of me for? I'm fucking nobody, bro. But they do, and it's humbling. But the other part that's really rewarding is they share, like, I want to share one with you that was really powerful, right? I walked in the post office and this woman walks out with her two daughters, a daughter and a son, sorry. And she's gone, Glen, are you Glen from TikTok? I said, yes. She said, can I give you a hug? I said, yeah, absolutely. I thought she was giving me a hug to say, oh, your story's so, you know, I want to hug you because of it. But that's not what it was about. She goes, can I share something with you? I said, absolutely. She says, I just split with my husband. She said, my husband's a violent alcoholic. He keeps smashing things around the house, so I've had to leave him. She said about a week ago, my daughter grabbed one of your videos. She said she walked into the house and she pressed play and she sat it down in front of him and she said, fucking watch that, and then left, right? About an hour later, he rang her crying and he said, I need to tell you something. Hurts me saying this. I need to tell you something. I was sexually abused when I was a little boy. And the fucking anger is just ripping at my soul. And now they're not back together, but he's been in rehab now for 8 months, rebuilding that man's life. And they are so grateful. You know, they said that, Glen, you were the catalyst. You were the reason that he chose to go to rehab. And I get so many people who message me. I was walking on a live the other day, like literally live in Parramatta on the streets. And a guy walks up and said, excuse me, mate, can you turn your mic off for a second? I said, yeah. And he shared with me how he'd just gone to the police and reported his childhood's abuse. He said, bro, I did that because of you. He said, the word that come to me was that I'm not going to be a victim. I'm not going to allow myself to sit in this silence. What I said on the video that he heard was that the strength in men is when we're vulnerable. When we turn around and say, this is my story and this is who I am. And if you don't like me, fuck you. Because in the past, I was so scared, if I tell you I've been abused, you won't like me anymore. And that's how us men have been programmed. That's actually weak. Strength is being able to say, this is me in my fullness and take or leave me.
Big time.
That's right. Yeah. And vulnerability is actually strength.
Big time. Yeah. I mean, you've got the most amazing comeback story.
I appreciate you, mate.
It's the most amazing comeback story. And to know what you were born into, you know, no one gets a choice in terms of the womb they come out of.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah.
And hearing everything you've been through and seeing you drag yourself out of that.
Yeah. Just
by the strength of your own will and courage. It's not just inspiring, and I think that's why I started this podcast, is it's an invitation to other people.
That's it.
That's what it is.
That's right.
If I can do this, then you can too.
Absolutely. And that's what I want to do. I hope that, I feel like my whole life's been a training ground for just that, to show people, you know, that there is light at the end of the tunnel, but the negative is no one can do that for you. There is no one that can come on a white horse and save your sorry ass. But the beautiful part is you can. You have the power, and you just need to put one step in front of the fucking other. Little baby steps, whatever it is, just win the day and win each day one day at a time. And in no time, you'll be a powerhouse.
Yeah, incredible. Mate, I feel very fortunate to have met you, and I'm so grateful that you've agreed to do this. How can we promote your stuff? Where do people buy your book? How do people support you with the Lego project?
Well, with the book, I have a page on Facebook called Predator's Paradise, or if you just Google my name, it feels funny to say that. If you just Google my name, Glen Fisher, I do come up everywhere these days, which is kind of a miracle. But Tiger for Life 66 is my TikTok and Instagram handle.
Yeah.
So if you want to get my book, the best, you can go to Amazon, Booktopia, all of those things it's on. But the best way is to get it from me. Yeah. That's where I make the most out of it. Amazon only gives me $2 a book. It's quite a sin, really. Yeah. I make a little bit more than that if I sell it privately, and it's less, believe it or not, buying it from me. With the Leg Up Project, I have a page on Facebook called The Leg Up Project, or just follow me on any of my socials. Just message me, man. I get a lot of messages, but I will answer them in time. I'm trying to get a friend to help pick up the slack a little so that we can get all these people answered.
Yeah. Look, thank you, mate. I really appreciate you being on the podcast. The name of the podcast is called The Greatest Comeback. It's kind of a double meaning. The greatest comeback really is coming back to yourself and rediscovering who you really are. And the story of you rediscovering who you really are is incredible and inspiring. And I want to thank you for being on the podcast.
I appreciate it, mate. You know, you said something earlier. I said to you, when I first took heroin, I realigned. I've now realigned. Drug-free.
Incredible. Yeah. That's the perfect place to leave it.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Glenn. Cheers, mate.